Greetings, this is Ron Smalek.
And Fellonius the Wizard.
And welcome to the first official episode of our discussion of the Lost television series.
Yes, we are having a podcast where we talk about what we have seen. Me, the newbie, Fellonius the Wizard.
And me, a bit experienced. If you haven't heard our episode 0, where we talk about our history and why we're watching the show, go ahead and listen to that. Hopefully you have watched the pilot episode of Lost, which was split into 2 episodes, episode 1 and episode 2, both called Pilot.
Yes, and we are going to cover them one at a time because they are a bit different.
Yeah, and we are going to spoil what happens in those episodes. I'm going to try not to spoil what happens in future episodes, but I am talking about the show from experience, and there are maybe some leading questions that I will be asking Fellonius along the way.
Yeah, hopefully I can't answer them.
All right. So in the first half of Pilot, the show starts off with what has become sort of an iconic image of the main character, Jack, waking up in a strange jungle. He's all beat up. He makes his way to a beach where there is the wreck of a plane and chaos and bodies and people trying to figure out what just happened to them.
Yeah.
You get introduced to a number of different characters and start to get glimpses of their personalities. Various things take place there on the beach, which we'll talk about in a moment. Yep. And the plane passengers, it becomes apparent that they're not going to be immediately rescued. It goes into their first night where they're all still kind of waiting on the beach. They've got some bonfires, so they're starting to eat some of the food left over on the plane. But they haven't really made shelters. They haven't really started surviving yet.
No, they don't feel the need for it.
Yeah, they're still partially in shock, partially looking for rescue. And they start to hear some kind of strange, loud mechanical noises in the jungle. Mm-hmm. And we get the first of what will be many, many flashbacks. This first episode has flashbacks of them on the plane, ending with what appears to be the plane in turbulence and then it coming down for a crash. Yes. And do you remember who the focus of this flashback was?
First one was Jack, wasn't it?
It was Jack. So this was a very Jack-centric episode. No, there are a lot of characters in Lost, and they're each going to get flashbacks, and they're each going to get episodes focused around them.
Okay.
So we come back to their present day, and by the way, this series is actually set, the calendar date in the show is set fairly close to the air date of the show.
So it's very modern.
Yeah, it's it'll come into play a little bit later. Not really from it doesn't really matter to the story, but when you're watching it, the first couple episodes in the show take only a few hours, but in our time it's over several weeks. Yeah, and so they timed it so that they catch up to a certain point in time that a certain episode aired on the date that it happens in the show. So we may talk about that later.
Okay. That's good.
Yep. So the next day, Kate and Jack. Kate is another one of the survivors. They decide that they need to go further into the jungle and look for the cockpit because she saw some smoke in that direction. Yep. And the part of the plane that these people were in is the fuselage. So the tail is missing and the cockpit is missing.
Yeah. They got the wings and the engines.
Pretty much. They definitely have the engines. Now, they go into the jungle, and another character, Charlie, comes with them. Charlie, all we really learn about Charlie, I think, in this episode is that he's part of a band. And Kate seems to recognize him, but Jack doesn't. And they find the cockpit. They find the pilot who was unconscious. And he basically wakes up long enough to give them the transmitter, the radio.
Yeah.
and tell them that they're looking for us in the wrong place. So they are completely off course,
Yeah.
which is obviously bad news. But he's kind of interrupted by
Something.
something. The giant mechanical noise, the big shadows across the window basically rips the pilot up out of the cockpit and tears him to pieces.
Yeah.
The only other thing I want to mention about episode 1 or part 1 of the pilot episode is while this exchange is going on, Charlie is in the bathroom of the plane, and he kind of misses some of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a very high level overview of a lot of stuff that happened in part 1. Do you have an overall favorite moment from part 1?
There is actually one that I really enjoyed, and it was so sudden. It's raining. Of course, it's raining, and it's raining heavily. And suddenly they're standing there, and it's heavy breathing, and they feel like they're haunted. And boom, sunshine. Everything's fine. And I really like that because that is tropical stuff that happens in some ways. And it was so sudden and it was so direct that even I noticed the weather. I usually don't do that. And somehow, I think it was Kate who was in perspective at that point. Even she was lightening up, easing up. And I got this very warm feeling. Just the sun just popped from the trees. I really liked that. That was one of my favorite ones. And actually, I do have a second one as well. Well, there is a guy who is suddenly rising up at the beach, and he was trying to go somewhere. And actually, he walked like a zombie, and he walked in front of the one of the engines, and that one got backfired. And he was, well, we didn't know his name, and we will never know his name.
Why is that?
He just got caught in the engine and was spit out in the other end. It went so fast. I didn't see that coming. He was a zombie. He was totally useless. I thought, I didn't even realize that he was just popping up there. And I was saying to myself, what is he? And he was gone.
Yeah.
And suddenly, no one actually did bother, and they just sat there. Okay, he just threw. Okay.
Well, I think they were all trying to get away from the massive explosion.
Exactly. There was a lot of things going on, and it's like they were all in shock. Well, he just went out the door.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Now,
I really liked that.
Okay. Oh, interesting. I wanted to say, when you talked about the rain, the characters that were in that scene was Jack, Kate, and Sawyer, right?
No, it was Charlie.
Or I'm sorry, Charlie, Kate, and Jack. Yes. Yeah. So Jack is sort of evolving into maybe de facto leader. He's a doctor and he's taking control.
Yeah.
Kate seems to be sort of following him, starting to be maybe one of his go-to people. And Charlie is kind of bumbling, following along, sort of the comedy, sort of asking the questions that the viewer might be asking.
That's your point, yeah.
Like, for example, when it rained, he said, like, is this normal? What's going on with the weather? So they are obviously not, and by the other actions of people on the beach, are not prepared or have no clue how to handle this tropical climate.
Nope.
Excuse me. Now, to me, my favorite moment, before we go too much further, is actually the very end of the first part. And when I watched the show the first time, I obviously appreciated it, but I was like you, I liked the moment of the guy getting sucked in the engine. But this time, the most meaningful part to me was Kate's acting at the end when the pilot gets grabbed and they all jump out of the plane and they're running in the jungle. They all get separated. And she runs into a banyan tree and she is just trembling with fear. And she is so scared. Her face and her eyes are looking around. And she's trying to learn from something Jack told her earlier, which is to count to 5. Let the fear take you for 5 seconds. Give it its moment. And then shut it off. And to me, just her performance in that moment was just superior. So that's
Yeah.
my new favorite moment in this.
Okay, that's a new one. Well, that's nice.
Yeah. Now, what about least? Do you have a least favorite moment?
Well, I named him in the first segment. I named him King Kong, the thing that is grabbing the pilot. I didn't like the King Kong
Okay.
on the other hand, I've seen the trailer. I know something about it. It's not a big giant ape out there. I know that, but I didn't like the King Kong bit because it's too obvious that we are going to have something like that.
Okay.
I mean, we don't even get to know the name of the pilot, and then he's gone.
Well,
That's really something that was annoying me because I didn't feel it fit in, but I know it's going to fit in later. But that's not the part. I didn't like it at that point.
Well, did you know this bit of trivia that the mechanical sounds when that King Kong comes around, one of them is actually a sound that was recorded. It's a taxi receipt machine from a taxi in New York.
Okay.
And there's actually one part in this episode where one of the characters says, "That sound, it sounds so familiar." And then she says she's from the Bronx. And it's just a throwaway line in the background. You would never notice it if you didn't know this piece of trivia. But it's like a...
And me being from Sweden, I have never seen the Bronx, not even on a postcard.
Gotcha. So my least favorite moment has to do with a certain blonde woman on the beach. And there's a character named Boone that we're introduced to. He's kind of a young kid.
Yeah.
And there's actually a pretty funny moment where we'll talk about that in a minute, where he's doing CPR, but he comes to this blonde girl and he's trying to kind of talk to her, and obviously a freaking plane just crashed on the beach. Everyone's freaking out, and she is so snotty to him.
Yep.
And he's trying to say, you need to eat something, like we need to start making some plans, and she's like insistent that a rescue boat is coming.
Yep.
And she gets so snotty with him, and she says, "I'll eat on the boat." And he's like, "What?" So just her excellent acting of a real witch was my least favorite moment. And I think that kind of goes to the things I'm looking for, is like the small moments that I didn't appreciate in my previous watch throughs.
Yeah, and I think that you're going to have a lot of them now.
Yeah. So a couple other moments that I noticed. I mentioned where Boone is doing CPR.
Yeah.
There is a lot of humor in the show, in my opinion. And also through the humor, you can see the characters forming relationships. So Boone is doing CPR. He's a lifeguard supposedly. Mm-hmm. And Jack is telling him, like, you're doing it wrong. Let me do it.
Perhaps you should return your license.
and Boone says, maybe we should do one of those whole things. And Jack's like, yeah, go get me a pen, because Boone's thinking a tracheotomy.
Yep.
And so then Boone goes off to find a pen, and Jack was joking, but it got him out of his hair.
Yes.
Let the professional doctor do his job.
Yes.
And then about 10-15 minutes later, like near the end of the episode, suddenly Boone comes bopping out of the jungle with
5-6 pence.
And he says, "I don't know which one will work best." And Jack looks at him, and at that moment, this is why I bring this up, because Jack's character, being a doctor and this natural leader, he could have said, "You're an idiot," but he just smiles and says, "They're all good, thanks." So he made this character feel important in that moment. And then later in the episode, when Jack and Kate are going off to find the pilot, he basically puts Boone in charge of watching over the sick. And I just thought that was a nice set of beats in this episode.
But if you consider what he had for options, I would. There was only Boone left.
Yeah, from what we've seen, people have only had very brief interchanges. They haven't had conversations.
No.
And you have to make very quick judgments of
characters. Yes, absolutely. And you and I are not going to be agreeing on Jack ever. I can tell you that much.
Okay. So
should we go through some of the characters, perhaps?
Sure. So we didn't see too many of them in the first episode, other than Jack. But tell me about Jack. Is he a positive or a negative impression on you?
He's a negative, very negative impression.
Really?
But he is now we have to watch it from the non-American way, because you are culturally a bit different than me. You want to have a hero. Me, I don't want to have one hero. I want them all to be heroes. That's one of the first thing. So when I see Jack starting in this fantastic start that you're talking about, for me he's a hero. I can see he's a hero. He's beautiful. He's really nice looking, and he can walk and run with a big wound in his back that he can't even see, and he has been thrown out of a plane very far, and the speed, well, we can't just judge it, but he's not going to be bothered with that sort of things. There are people screaming. He is the hero. He has to do what he has to do, and of course he is trained for this. Of course he is, but he's too much hero, too much Superman, too much. You could just as well have that little hair thing hanging down in his forehead and call him Clark Kent. It's too much, and I really hate those. I really disgust those characters. And then let me
give you a piece of quick trivia about Jack. So in the original script, he was supposed to die at the end of the pilot.
Well, I wouldn't have missed him. But then again, who would I have as a one-man hero? Because if you're looking through the other characters, there's no one left. He is the only one. The rest of the character set, well, apart from Charlie, is actually common people. And one thing that I knew and have really enjoyed is the fact that I don't recognize one single actor. Mm-hmm. They don't feel, except for Jack, they don't feel like actors. They feel like common people that I can meet back home in my streets in Sweden even. I mean, Hurley, I can meet Hurley anytime down my city. That type of people that's what I usually meet. But Jack, I never meet Jack. I never meet the hero.
Now, Hurley in the first part of the pilot he's a bigger guy. He's got really long curly hair, maybe a bit of Spanish ancestry in him, I would say. Might
be, yeah, but he gives it. He doesn't really have anything to say much more than he's going to keep. We don't know his name in the first part.
That's true. You get it in the second part, but he does do two very important things.
Yes,
that I'll mention. One of them is just he's so funny because he is very natural.
Yep.
And there's this one part where they're sitting around, and there's a black guy there, and he has a young son who's probably like, what would you say, maybe 9?
9, 10, yes.
And Hurley is going to suggest that they take some of the dead bodies out of the plane, maybe use the plane as a shelter.
Yep.
And so he spells, instead of saying remove the bodies, he spells BODYS.
Yeah.
And Charlie's looking confused, and the black guy's looking, and he's like, what are you spelling, man? Bodies? And it was just really funny how Hurley was trying to protect the kid.
Yeah.
But he goofed it up unintentionally and just naturally was funny.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you noticed, but like as everybody else was kind of trying to get their own selves together, Jack was basically trying to tend to the wounded and triage and figure out who needs to get fixed first. And Hurley, do you remember what Hurley was doing?
Yes, he was actually trying to fetch as much food as possible from the plane and delivering it to different people, while Saeed and, was it Charlie, who was doing the bonfire thing. So they got the heating going and we got the food going. That was the last food, I suppose.
Yep, and I didn't notice that at all, or at least it didn't register with me my first watch through that he's a big guy,
Yep.
so you could have maybe thought he was gathering the food for himself, but he was literally
Nope.
delivering it to all the people around the beach. I
Let,
thought that
let,
was
let me share with you what I was actually thinking about Hurley. Hurley to me was a guy that had no name, but he had. I felt a lot for her. I really liked him. He is afraid. He doesn't fit in anywhere. He's one of those. Perhaps he's a gaming guy or something. I'm not totally sure, but he's some sort of young nerd. Probably hadn't had much of a job. It feels like he's a bit aside from the society. He doesn't fit in, but he would do anything to fit in, and he knows that he is going to be. Have you read Lord of the Flies?
sure.
Anyone, that's a classical. He is the one who's going to be eaten. He feels like he's totally threatened by whatever's going to happen because he has realized that this is going the wrong way. So he's really trying to suck up to people, but he's doing it his only style. This is how he would work, and he feels, well, not totally honest, but as honest as anyone on that beach. And he is not letting the shock and the fear grab him. He's just afraid that he will socially not fit in. He's socially afraid.
And I think one thing we should also mention about the number of people on the beach. So there's about a dozen people that we've seen with lines so far.
Yep.
And at the end of the episode, the pilot, when they find the pilot before he gets killed, he asks how many survivors, and Jack says there's at least 48.
Yeah.
So there's at least 48 people on the beach that we could potentially be getting glimpses of.
Yeah.
So
Too many.
So before I give the synopsis of the second part of the pilot, do you want to talk at all about anyone else?
Yeah, I will
Kate or
rightly to mention Kate and Charlie. I didn't like Charlie. Charlie is one of those a-holes that I would probably go out and pop a fist in his face. He's not really interested in society. He's not interested in people. He's just interested in one thing. That's Charlie, and he's going to do anything to get Charlie what Charlie wants. The only thing about Charlie that's good is that he's at least honest. That is how I see it, because I'm watching him with my teacher's eyes. I'm having an eye on him.
Okay.
Kate, on the other hand, I really like. I love her, sort of. It's something about her that brings on anything. But in the second segment, I saw something else, and I've added that. I shouldn't probably mention it, but it's more like she's really hunting for a father than a guy.
Okay, so let's give a synopsis of part 2, and then we can continue this. So this second part actually starts with a flashback from Charlie's point of view.
Yep.
While he's in the plane. And basically, we find out that he is a druggie.
We knew that, didn't we?
Did you know that in the first part?
But I had the feeling.
Okay. So he's a druggie, and he's basically trying to hide his drugs in the toilet at the time that the plane crashes.
Yeah, but he found them again.
Then we come back to the current day, and we see various characters start to talk to each other on the beach. We're introduced. There's a pregnant lady who has a moment with the blonde lady that I don't like. There's a couple that speaks Korean, and they are kind of staying away from everybody else. There is a part where the young black boy, I think by now we know his name is Walt.
Yep, and we also know that he has a dog.
Yes, Vincent. He's looking for Vincent, and he finds something in the jungle.
Yes, he finds a pair of what do I call them?
Handcuffs.
Sorry.
And that basically starts people getting now extra nervous because there's potentially some sort of criminal among them.
Yeah.
And we see a fight break out between a gentleman. I'm just going to say his name, Saeed. He was in the Gulf War against the
US
American and other forces. but obviously he's, well, possibly he's a good guy now. Seems to be.
His American accent is good anyway.
Yeah, and he's fighting with sort of a redneck guy.
They call him redneck at least.
Yep, but we find out that, okay, the radio doesn't work that Kate and Jack brought back from the
cockpit, yeah, that's true.
Cockpit, but Saeed thinks he can maybe fix it, and then when he does, that they need to get to higher ground for a better signal.
Yeah, and being army trained, he has a point.
Yeah, so a group of them are going to go off. Sawyer, which is the redneck guy, Kate, Saeed, who else is with them?
Yeah, suddenly the blonde chick is going to join them.
Yep, and we'll call her Shannon. That's her name.
Yes.
And is that it? I can't remember now.
No, because Shannon's going to go, her brother Boone has to follow.
That's right. So they're going to all go try and climb up this arduous mountain to get a better signal. Meanwhile, on the beach, some random stuff happens. I'm going to note one thing, which is Walt, the young black boy, is reading a Spanish comic book.
Yep.
And Sawyer is, before he goes, he's reading a letter, and immediately after he reads it, that's when he goes and follows them.
Yeah.
We also see a scene where two characters play backgammon.
Yeah.
Or at least...
at least they're going to.
So, okay, give me...
We get back to that.
Yeah, okay, we'll get back to that.
Yeah.
There's a couple different scenes that are touching on the beach, and then we go back to the people that are going inland to try and get to a higher elevation. They're attacked by a polar bear.
Yeah. And we all know that polar bears do not live in tropical rainforests, so there is something fishy going on.
And this is the point in the show where some people make up their minds that this show is dumb and get
what? Okay.
Yeah, because they honestly, I've heard this so many times that Lost. That's that show where there's a polar bear in the jungle. That was too weird for me.
What? That was
you got
probably
past this point.
This is my King Kong. This is my King Kong. I bought him red rockstock. I mean, that's okay. Well, okay. Well.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So there's also I'll mention a couple other little things. So Jack and Hurley are on the beach. There was a guy on the plane sitting next to Kate who has shrapnel in him.
Yeah.
And Jack's finally to the point where if he doesn't take it out, he's going to die.
And if he takes it out, he's going to die.
Yes, but he might be able to extend his life a little bit longer by pulling it out.
Yeah. There was a point there.
Mm-hmm. And then that leads us to a flashback of Kate.
Yeah.
Now, just want to note that in this particular flashback is the moment that hooked me on the show. I talked about it in episode 0.
Yeah.
And it's the camera angle and seeing the people sucked out of the film that I couldn't believe they showed that on national TV. And I thought that was the very first, in my memory, that was the very first moment of the show after Jack wakes up. And the whole time I'm sitting there watching this going, wait, when is that going to happen? When is that going to happen? And they had 2-3 other flashbacks where it started to happen, but the big one didn't happen until now. So anyway.
Kate knew that the tail end of the plane was going to be broken off. So we know from the Kate perspective, we should see it from her perspective later on. That's my thinking.
Well, she didn't know it was going to break off, but she did say when they were on the beach that the tail was missing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jack didn't know that.
That's a very good point. That is a very good point. She's the one that brought that up. And then there's 2 more things that I think are worth mentioning in synopsis. The group that went off eventually does get to higher ground, and they do pick up a transmission. Now, did you catch what that was all about? Was that clear?
That was an old signal from 16 years back from a French lady that Shannon actually finally found herself sober enough to to at least try to translate. Yeah, and you really forgot something. Kate is the one with the handcuffs.
Yep. So the transmission's been repeating for 16 years and 5 months, which basically...
According to Sayid.
Yep, and you just see everybody... Basically what's going through their mind is, oh no, somebody's been stuck here that long, a mayday. If they haven't gotten found, we're screwed.
Yeah.
And then what was the last piece?
The last piece was the shrapnel coming out of the guy that suddenly becomes the policeman that had Kate in custody.
Yeah, so he's an air marshal, and Kate was the one in handcuffs.
Yeah.
And where is Kate right now?
At that point, she is up on the mountain.
And she has something in her possession, right?
Yeah, she's got...
The gun. From
No,
Sawyer.
she returned the gun to Sawyer.
Are you sure?
Yep, and the clip to Sayid. So
Okay.
Sayid's got the ammunition and Sawyer's got the gun.
That's right. Okay.
And that shows something about Kate. That was something that I was going to get back to later on.
Yep. And I want to kind of go back to something in part 1 that I skipped over.
Okay.
When Jack and Kate first met, and he was telling her the story about fear.
Yeah,
and
5 seconds
counting
and stuff.
5.
Yeah.
At one point, she says, if it were me, I would have run.
Yeah.
And he said, well, you're not running now.
Nope.
And she just gives him a little look, which you would totally not know until you... But looking back from this moment...
Yeah.
She actually is on the run because she knows that that's the marshal back there. And if he wakes up, he's going to tell everyone she's a criminal. If he doesn't, maybe she's free from him.
Yeah.
So technically, she is on the run.
Yeah.
At this point. So I
But
thought that
but
was
now you're really getting the serious part. Let's talk about Kate.
Yeah.
What is her crime? What is her crime according to you at this point?
Oh, at this point, we have absolutely no idea.
Exactly. She's just been doing some fake book accounting, right? Mm-hmm. That's what I see. She's a nice person. What is the first thing she wants to do when suddenly the plane is going shaking and he's got the policeman got this briefcase or whatever it was in his forehead and he's passing out. She's trying to save him. That's her first thing. She's a nice person. She's not going to kill him.
Now, I think we should clarify though, Kate. So everyone on this plane was going from Australia back to the U.S. That's a long flight. So for a U.S. Marshal to go there and actually get approval from their government to extradite and take somebody back in handcuffs is probably a pretty big deal, though.
Yeah, but this guy could be just as eager or trying to show something. I don't know. I don't like the face of him either, but he's not a hero, so that's not the point. He's going to be a goner.
So Kate, you like her, though?
I like her, and I still think she's going to be a nice person. And yes, she has grown already, but she's not a runner anymore. I would say that.
Yeah, I mentioned before that Jack was supposed to die in the pilot. The original plan was for her to become the leader of the
That
group.
wouldn't have worked.
So, well, we'll see. We'll see when we get a little further.
Yep.
Jack, you don't like Jack?
Well, because he's a hero.
Okay.
He's still that fun. But he did, however, taught us something. Anything that ends on isilin or isin is antibiotics.
Yeah.
That was fun to know because I have never thought of it like that. If it ends with those endings, medicine, any home medicine you have, ending with that is antibiotics. I didn't know that.
So when I first watched the show, I kind of recognized, like you did, that Jack's going to be the hero.
Yeah.
But it didn't really... I didn't pay that much attention to him. I sort of said, okay, he's the hero. Let's see what everyone else is. In this time watching it, though, I really appreciate him playing the hero and seeing his mind triage each person who needs the most attention.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really good to show. Just the writing of the show was really good in that
Absolutely. And his judgment seems correct. I mean, he didn't give give the pregnant lady much attention at all, because he knows that he can't do anything anyway. And if she's going to have a miscarriage, she's going to have that anyway. We go over to this dark lady who is not breathing instead. Yeah, he's doing the judgment correctly, but he's a hero. So if he hadn't done that correctly, I would probably put him down as a loser.
Okay, so we talked about Jack, talked about Kate. Boone,
Yeah.
I like Boone.
I like Boone.
He's a normal kid. He's kind of funny. He's trying.
He might find what he's looking for, because he's not really knowing what his potential meaning of life is yet. But at the moment, it's family.
Okay, and then Hurley's in my positive column.
Absolutely.
Let's see. We have the Black Father. His name is Michael.
Okay.
Any impressions of him so far?
Well, he's not been working on being a father. Let's say that, at least, because he doesn't know what to do. He has no idea. And Walt has been living with his mother for most of his time, and she's died in Australia, and Michael has been just collecting me. I don't think they have met more than perhaps when he was born or something like that.
Yeah, Michael does seem to be really trying and frustrated, but Walt is just too... He doesn't really want... He seems irritated.
Yeah. Walt knows that he has nothing to choose from, but as long as he has Vincent, it's okay.
But Walt, to me, also seems like he's generally okay with himself in this situation.
Yes.
He at one point goes, and we mentioned backgammon, he sees this bald guy on the beach.
The clown. That guy is really funny.
Okay.
Right? What's his name? I really like the clown.
He has not been named yet.
No.
I'll spoil it that his name is Locke.
Okay.
They call him Locke.
Locke. Okay.
Locke. Now, the reason... now, his name... By the way, all the people on this show, they're named things for certain reasons.
Okay.
So, just by way of example, Jack and Sawyer are references, I believe, to the Dark Tower series.
Okay, from Stephen King.
That I mentioned in episode 0, because the main character of some of Stephen King's book is Jack Sawyer. Locke and several other characters are named after famous philosophers.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So John Locke is a famous philosopher. That's where this guy gets his name.
And that's cool, because he's also the only one who's laid back enough to take it with some sort of, ease. Yes, he knows that he is on a beach, but he's not going anywhere from the beach.
You called him a clown.
Yeah, because in the first pilot's part, he was actually trying to joke with some sort of orange peel in his mouth, trying to make an orange smile. That's the first. And it really liked me. I just smiled myself. And he's also the one who's always having a bit of a twinkle in both in his eye and his mouth. I liked him. It feels like he's deadly sick or something like that, because
Really?
Yeah, because I don't see how can you be so laid back, in shock. He's actually taking meditation or something like that. He's just sitting there. When the rain comes, he's enjoying himself. He's really enjoying just being alive. He's still alive. That gives me the feeling that this guy is going to die of sickness or anything.
Okay,
perhaps
we're
cancer
going to have
or something.
some good fun when we watch this.
Yeah.
I'm putting a little yellow sticky note back to that note. We'll talk about that later.
So that's from my experience meeting real life persons, and then you can see that this show and their characters and their actors are very good, because if they are going to give me that type of feedback but by their acting, then they are good. And if they're not, well, they still give me something, right?
Well, I was trying to strip away what I know of these characters when I watched this, and in my notes, in part 1, I didn't really have an impression of him. The orange peel head, when I first watched the show, I thought, oh, this guy is really weird. I'm going to like him. This time around, I said, until he starts talking, I'm not going to make any judgment. when
He did.
when he's on the beach in this part 2, and Walt comes up and he starts telling him about backgammon and the struggle between black and white.
Yep.
I got a creepy feeling.
Yeah.
And at the end, the last thing he says to Walt is, "Do you want to know a secret?"
Yeah.
And watching this now, I have my son is now 13.
Yeah.
If I saw my son sitting on the beach with some stranger playing a game and he's like, "Hey kid, you want to know a secret?" I would be a little nervous.
A little nervous, okay.
So my impression of Locke kind of started going up, but now it's sort of like in a question mark state.
But I'm still positive.
Shannon for me is
Spoiled
still going
brat.
downhill.
Yeah.
She's a brat.
Yeah, she's a hen with no brain.
Let's see.
But on the other hand, Shannon is the only one who has her nail fixed.
She gave herself a pedicure.
Ooh, we must talk about Sayid. I really like Sayid. If we're talking about survivalists on this beach, Sayid has to be one of those who has to live at least through the first season.
I really like Sayid in these 2 episodes, or in this episode.
Yeah.
His credit goes up.
Yeah. He's really is the person that he's talking about. And I know that he's lying. They all are. But he's at least lying because he knows why he's doing it.
What do you think he's lying about?
Let's say he's not telling the whole truth.
Okay. You think they're all lying, though? They're all hiding something.
Yeah.
Well,
They don't know what they can say yet.
Well, this is one thing. This is my least favorite moment of all of part 2, is that people are already holding back information from each other. Specifically, Jack, Kate, and Charlie didn't come back to the beach and say that the pilot got killed, and there's a monster out there, and we should all be scared. They are keeping it low-key because they think it's best for everybody.
But still, Boone knew that the pilot was killed.
Did he?
Yes.
Maybe they said that, but they didn't tell everyone.
They didn't tell it in front of the camera. That's true.
Yeah, and well, they even seem to be. Jack and Kate had a moment where they're kind of keeping it quiet because they don't want to panic. This is something that I detest in books, in TV shows, and movies. Like Harry Potter is pretty much 7 books of kids not telling parents what they should be telling.
Exactly. Totally. I'm totally with you on that one, actually. But that's part of it, because what are you going to tell the audience? It's always the audience that you are telling, not each other.
Yeah. Now, let's see. What about the Marshal? So the Marshal only had a few lines in the flashback. He's probably dying on the beach.
Yeah.
Kind of cocky.
Yeah. But he's a marshal. He's okay on that. He's probably a federal one, right? Because you have different types. And I think he is his work. He has no wife back home, and if he has, probably divorced. That's
now,
one thing.
One thing I should have also said about Kate, and it relates to the Marshal, is while the plane was going down, the oxygen masks popped down.
Yeah.
He's unconscious because he's been hit in the head with suitcase.
Yeah.
She takes the time to put his mask on.
Yes. That's the first thing she does.
Yeah, even before her own and getting out of her handcuffs. So I think that's another plus in her.
Absolutely.
Any other characters that jumped out at you at this
Well,
point?
we have to talk about Sawyer as well, because Sayid and Sawyer are the 2 survivalists in this one. Sawyer is always looking out for number 1 as well, but he is one of those who has learned a lot about surviving. And he's the greatest of the one that doesn't talk about what he's doing. Suddenly he has a gun. He just found it. Yeah, right.
Well, he saw that the Marshal had it on his ankle, and he took it from the Marshal.
Yeah. But he was looking for it.
And you know, the other characters look down on him for that, but then he reminds them that, hey, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have shot and killed the polar bear, and you guys would all be dead.
But he couldn't know that there was going to be a polar bear.
Oh, of course, but So for me, he's actually. So I have a list of 17 characters, and my current impression, he's the only one that I have a plus/minus
Yeah.
because I don't yet know if
Yeah,
I
but
like him.
you and I would not sit and watch TV together with this character. But we would probably go to him if we want some sort of help on a beach when the plane's gone down.
And so far, what we've seen, the other characters don't really seem to want his help.
No. Now, there is one thing. When I know when they call him a redneck, that's not a positive sign, right?
It basically, it generally is somebody that you think is not as smart. They're kind of dopey. They sit around, drink a lot.
Yeah.
Goof around with cars. And I really don't mean to disparage.
No, not me neither.
I'm just saying what the sort of,
Yeah.
what that word kind of means. Rednecks are typically like sunburned.
Yeah.
The back of their necks are sunburned because they're out doing manual labor all day.
Yeah.
Not somebody.
We have the same type of people, but we don't look down upon them because they usually are the crafty ones. They are the ones that can go out and chop down a whole forest and not be tired by it. And we need them as well. And we who are living in the cities and getting fat, we are just actually envious of them. But when they said redneck in that case, I thought more of the dialect. He's from Louisiana, Mississippi, or something like that, southern. And we have the same thing here. If we say like, well, let's say a bondtelp or something, he's just a farmer's boy or something like that. We mean usually the dialect, not the person. So I didn't get anything out of the word redneck when I heard it, more than okay, you're talking down to him. You won't do that for long.
So you, any other characters that you want to touch on?
We have the Korean couple, but I'm not totally sure if they are. The Korean man did not give his wife any food. He's trying to give everyone else sushi. And they're not really liking it. I really don't like him. He's trying to do something else. He's trying to suck up as well. I'm not totally sure. The Korean woman is a big question mark.
So the Korean man's name is Jin, just so this will be easier. Her name is Sun.
Jin and Sun, okay.
And they haven't really been named yet, but that's okay. So Jin did some things in these 2 episodes that really annoyed me. And basically he's trying to keep her away from the other men, telling her to button up her shirt.
Yes, she's buttoned down all the time.
Just being almost physically abusive.
Yeah.
Not quite, but almost. He seems...
That's his culture. I don't see that as a problem, but I see that it can annoy people, of course. And the American people that is going to have it the correct way or no way, of course they're going to react to it.
Yeah, and then like you said, he tries to get some food and bring it to the others.
Yeah.
I did get the impression that he was trying to trade or trying to get in with them, but I didn't feel that it was like a I didn't have quite as strong a negative reaction as it sounds like you did. I thought it was more of just he knows how to help and he's going to try,
Yeah, well, he knows how to get food, at least, and even if it's raw, it is food. You have to remind yourself about that. And then we have the pregnant lady. We need to talk about her. She's a tough cookie, isn't she?
We don't know much about her other than she's pregnant, and I was really surprised at how big she is.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I know she's pregnant through a decent part of the show, at least the first series. I won't say more than that, but
she has to have popped to the 6th season.
Yeah, I mean, she looks like she's ready to go.
Yeah, totally.
But
she was in 8th month.
Yeah, she just was generally happy and tried to connect with people.
But she also had a moment. Was it in the first or the second? Doesn't matter actually. Where she realized that yes, the baby might be dead already. He hasn't kicked, or she hasn't kicked in since yesterday.
Yeah, she was afraid of that, but then
She got a bit of sushi and suddenly it kicked.
Yeah, so she is the only person who ate food that they caught so far that we've seen.
Yeah.
And suddenly, as soon as she tasted the food, the baby started moving.
Yeah.
And she was so excited that she took Jin, the Korean guy's hand, and put it on her stomach.
And he didn't like that.
Oh, he was so afraid because he didn't know how to react to this woman touching it, having him touch her in such an intimate way. That was a really nice scene.
Yeah, that was good. But she's a tough cookie because she has realized that it could go wrong. I mean, she's surviving. She doesn't look... I don't think she knows how she looks. It doesn't bother with that because she's pregnant. But she has realized that she might lose the baby. And at that point I thought, she's a tough cookie. She knows what real life is. She's been through something else before this.
Well, and I have to say one thing I also noticed was in the first part of the pilot when there's the big explosion from the engine.
Yeah.
Her name is Claire. Claire, Jack, and Hurley go flying through the air and all land on their stomachs.
Yep.
And she just shakes it off, and Hurley's laying there moaning.
Yeah. With sand all over his face.
Yeah. So let me jump to kind of questions. So
yeah,
at this episode ends with Charlie saying, "Where are we?"
Yeah.
And to me, that's one of the obvious questions. Now, the question I had at the end of the first part was, what is that noise in the monster? And you called it King Kong. And
yeah.
You called the polar bear King Kong. So do you think the polar bear is the monster?
It can be for me. I don't bother. The dog was my first question, and that's Vincent, so that's good. Got that covered. Where are we is really the big question, but they are all decided on it's an island.
Mm-hmm.
How though they know that? There's no one who has gone around the whole thing yet.
Okay, I definitely said it was an island, but I'm not sure if they...
They have said it twice.
Did they?
And one of them is Charlie.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes.
So
how do they know it's an island? Is it an island? That's really something to know about.
I feel like if I crashed on a beach in the tropics, I would probably assume I was on an island.
No, I wouldn't. I would follow the beach until I found civilization.
That would be a good plan. No, nobody has done that yet. That's true.
No, first you stay with the wreckage. That's true. One night is good, but then you don't set off to the cockpit. You set off across the beach.
Okay.
The hotel is right around the corner, right?
So this is off topic. We play a lot of a game called Minecraft where you start in the middle of a wilderness and everybody's first impression is to build a shelter.
Yeah.
And every time I try to role play in that game, my first thought is I'm going to go explore and try to find civilization.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I've never come to terms with, of this idea of just instantly building a shelter. Like I would explore first until I gave up and then I would build a shelter.
Yeah.
But anyway,
we are getting a bit short on time, Ron.
Yes. So any closing thoughts on the pilot? I only have one more thing to say.
I would say that the first part was more or less settling in on the fact that we are on the beach with the plane. The second part, however, was more action. There was going on so many stuffs between people and the environment that I was excited. I didn't want the show to stop. And as you said, we are now eager, waiting third episode, both of us.
So the one last thing that I want to just have you think about, and maybe we'll come back to it later, is I think it's interesting that the title of this was Pilot.
Yeah.
And one of the big things that happens is that they go and try and find the pilot.
Yeah.
And what happened to him. I've always thought that's an interesting coincidence. So
no, I don't think it's old coincidence, but you have to do a pilot as a TV show, because you are going to show the executives who are going to pay you. You have to show them a pilot. That's what they called. In this case, they just, we thought we'd put in a pilot. It could have been a co-pilot just as well.
Well, in this, by the way, was $12 million pilot, the most expensive pilot, and it would remain the most expensive pilot until 2010, when a show called Boardwalk Empire had a more expensive pilot.
Yeah, should be Mad Men as well. No, never mind. Well,
I enjoyed watching this more than the first. I think I've watched this for season 1 twice before.
Okay.
And I enjoyed watching it this time even more than before.
Yeah, well, as a newbie, I can always say that I am very glad that I got the chance to get back to Lost, because it feels like this is something that you should have seen it. It feels like it. It's like I'm telling people that you should see the first 3 Star Wars movies. You don't have to see episodes 1 to 3, but the first 3, you need to have seen them somehow. It's a bit of your cultural inheritance or something. Lost is up there.
Yeah. So if we went a little bit long in this episode, there was a lot to cover, but that's the way it is.
And we are trying to find our format.
Yeah. Next episode of our show, we're going to try and cover episodes 3, 4, and 5 of Lost.
Yes.
And if I was more prepared, I would have the names of those episodes handy.
One of them is Walkthrough or Walkless or something like that.
Okay, we're going to cover episode 3, which is Tabula Rasa, episode 4, which is Walkabout, and episode 5, which is White Rabbit.
So if you want to join us and not get any spoilers, be sure to be watching them during the week.
Yeah, before next week when we try to talk about those. I can tell you it may be hard to get 3 into 1, so we'll have to see how we do it.
Yeah. We'll try at least.
Awesome. I'm glad that you're enjoying the series so far.
Yes, and I'm glad that I am enjoying it with you as usual.
All right. See you next week.
Yes, thank you.
What do you mean, get your character sheets?
No, it's not like it's a role-playing game.
Oh,
I had some sort of... I had to find... I mean, the redneck, he's not redneck, he's Sawyer.
Because I think...
The fatherless is not Walt, it's Walt.
Because I think that would be a hilariously awesome idea if you made a character sheet for each character as they were revealed.
That wouldn't be able. Because there are too many lies in this show, because... Yeah.
Maybe we need to make a Lost role-playing game when we're done with this, though.
Well, perhaps.